everyone. Welcome to Relate to You. Thank you so much for being here with us. I know it's been a while. We apologize for that, but sometimes life gets not in the way, but just life happens, and we went out on break and it was just very difficult to record and do adulting. So, but we're here, we're back. Thank you so much. Please come back. Please come back and watch us. As well, as you all know, this is our final season. So it would be really good if all of you could see us through, especially those hardcore fans that started with us. We apologize to you, but we're back. So right now we're going to talk about something that I feel like a lot of people deal with, but we're just not brave enough to talk about, which is envy.
Yes.
A lot of us, I think, we feel like, I think because especially in the Christian world and in church, that's sort of like a taboo. That's sort of like, oh my God, how can you be envious? And how can you feel envy? And I feel like that makes us less open to talk about it, but it happens. Mm-hmm. You and I both have lived through it, even with each other. So I think it's important that we shed some light on it and really talk about how we deal with when we feel envy. Now, I feel, for me, I don't know what's your take on, but I feel like there's a difference between feeling envy and being an envious person.
I agree.
For me, feeling envy, it's normal. It happens. I just have to deal with it. It's an emotion. It's fleeting and it goes. An envious person, I don't think I'm an envious person. I think I've seen enough envious people to know that I'm not there. I'm not that. But I do have envy sometimes. I do feel envy sometimes. What do you think?
No, I agree. I wouldn't. I mean, I wouldn't consider myself an envious person because the reason why we're bringing this whole subject up is because I feel like we can talk about the realities of it and also what we do to handle it. And I think that someone who does that and is aware of, okay, I'm having this emotion, is someone who's actively not wanting to be in a state of envy.
Yes.
And so therefore, I don't think that I'm an envious person. I think there are times where maybe that feeling might be a little bit longer to tackle. Mm-hmm. And that's what we're going to talk about today.
Yes. So, Kes, first off, for you right now, what are your triggers?
And am I envious about?
Yes, and I don't know why, but I feel cringe when I use the word triggers. But yes, basically, what are some moments that you realize, oh, I'm struggling with envy right now?
I'm gonna do my crisscross. I think pregnancies. I think for me, when you get married, or even before when you get married, when you're single, there is this, constant, not for everybody, for me, I should say, there was always the desire of me quiero casar. I want to get married. I want to move on to that next season. Then, you start dating and then it's like, okay, when are you going to get engaged? And then you get engaged and cuando se van a casar? And then te casas and when are you going to have babies, And so there's the constant of like, and then you have a baby, when you have another one, So in a sense, like the circle around you, and it's not just church, it's not just family, it's coworkers, it's all around you. Mm-hmm. This constant like, well, what else are you doing, And so, hitting those milestones throughout my life, for a really long time, I wanted to be in a relationship, and then I was in a relationship, and then I had my whole experience getting engaged, and that was amazing. I feel like I enjoyed it, and then we get married, and then that was beautiful, And I'm not going to go into, so much detail, but I think that has been currently what has been the hardest thing, and it's a constant thing of, you think that you're already past it, or you think that you're already at a place where you feel like I've already dealt with this. I've already dealt with this emotion. and I'm okay. I'm happy for so and so, that is in this season, and we're not in that season, for personal reasons. And the reality is that, nobody knows why, you're in that state of like,
Right.
¿por qué no te has casado?
Mm-hmm.
Well, you don't know. I'm not going to open up my whole life to you as to why I'm not there. Or, why don't you have a baby there? By baby yet? Well, I'm not going to open up to you and tell you, oh, well, this is why, And I think for me, when it came to, that point, it was like, okay, it was like every single post I would see, it was just like our church went into this like
Frenzy.
frenzy. I'm like, man, how is it spring and it's freaking November? Like, what is going on? Like, something's happening in the church. What water are they drinking? And it was so interesting how it was like boom, 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 baby, baby, baby. And I remember that there was one instance where, someone, did a very beautiful like pregnancy announcement, and social media is it's such a tool nowadays to create an environment for envy,
Oh, yes.
and I know that we've all been part of the problem, but we've also been recipients of the problem.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
We've all posted something that someone else doesn't have, and we've all seen something that someone else have that we wish we could have. And I remember seeing this post, and I just cried. I just cried tears. I was just so broken by this very, very beautiful, very happy moment that somebody else is having, that rightfully so wants to share it with their friends and family. I'm not going to stand here and say, oh, I'm against pregnancy announcement. No, not in the least. But in that moment, because I was currently dealing with, I want to be in that season, and for whatever reason, I'm not, that was straight up a hurt
Mm-hmm.
and a disappointment and a feeling of envy.
Mm-hmm.
And that was just like, whoa, like, what is this? And I think, and we'll discuss this as we break it down. I think it's easy to be happy for someone that you love, and that you're like, for example, like if Lula had something that I didn't have, out of love for Lula and out of the relationship that I have for Lula, I think Lula and I have done this in our lives. Like, there's been moments where she's been excelling in her life and I'm not, and I know how to put those feelings away
Mm-hmm.
and show up for her and be happy for her. There's been times where in my job, like, she just shows up and she's just like, I'm so proud for what's happening in your life. I'm so proud of what's happening in your job. And I feel that genuine love that she can put whatever she's going on in her personal life and show up for me. So I think that's one area, but it's very different when those human emotions start to fester when it's someone that you may not have love for, or you might
Mm.
not have like, you might be like, I don't really like that person, and that person is living in a season, or they're enjoying something I wish I could
Right.
have, and it's like, why her?
Mm-hmm.
Why them? Why are they getting to do that? Why, like, what's wrong with me? And that's where that feeling of like, that struggle comes in, of like, ¿y yo qué, Dios? Like, ¿y yo
Yeah.
qué? Yo pensé que era bien esto y lo otro, and we start to, make ourselves better than what we are,
Yes. And better than
because
others.
better than others, and we start to compare ourselves and say, you know what, well, I've seen so and so and this is how they act, and I would never, but yet so and so is enjoying this. And so
This, yeah.
I think for right now, that's been currently the area of like envy. And then I think the only other, I guess, trigger, if I have to choose, it would probably be something along the lines of like, um, I think sometimes I envy people's like very nonchalant, stress free, carefree, doesn't have a care in the world attitude, because I struggle with stress and I struggle with anxiety. When I see someone just so like, I'm not gonna worry about that, and I get that a lot with Lula. Lula's very like, she overthinks things, but for the most part, she's very like, I have a headache. It's whatever. I'm not gonna think about it. Or, oh, I didn't do that. No, it's fine. Like she brushes things off, and sometimes I'm like, how do you do that? How do you do that? And yo que tanto quisiera de no quedarme en esta situación and to be able to push past it. Or when I see certain sisters that they just seem so spiritually firm and like nothing seems to hit them, and you're like, how do you do it? I think I get that envy there. And the last one would probably be something along the lines of, I think sometimes there's elements of like grief. There are just some things that, when I see someone with their dad and they're not, being respectful, or they're not, being particularly kind, I'm envious of the time that they have right now and how they're wasting it. And I get so mad. I get so mad. And I'm just like, you don't know how long you're going to have your mom or dad. And the fact that you have this attitude, and for the record, it's not just with, my dad, it's even with my mom. With parents, yes. When I see someone, berating their parent, or they're just very like, they dismiss their parent, that attitude, I guess it's not that I'm envious of that attitude. I'm envious of the like, you're so blind that you get to have this time with your parent and I don't. I'm living and aging, and I'm living in a season that my dad can't be a part of. And if I could go back in time and have more time with him, I could. So I would say those are the three main like triggers of like my envy.
For me, I think, I'll be lying to myself if I didn't put it out there. For relationships, yes, absolutely, relationships, and just the whole idea of family, the whole idea of marriage and what that entails. And same thing is it's usually those thoughts of like, why them and not me? I've done this and that, or I think I've done this and that, and I'm not such a this, I'm not such a that. I'm trying. At least I have awareness,
Right.
And like you said, you try to make yourself out to be better than what you truly, truly are. And the funny thing about envy is that it all comes down to ego. It all comes down to self-centered ideologies, and a self-centered idea of who you think you are
and what you think you deserve,
and what you think you deserve. And sometimes you see it clearly in other people. I'm like, oh my God, this is an envious person. But then you take a look at yourself and you're like, oh my God, but I've felt those things before. I've had those thoughts before of like, truly honest, like, let's call it for what it is. I'm better than such and such. How come I haven't received what they have, right? And hasta eso le doy gracias a Dios that I don't think I've ever felt that kind of envy where it's like, okay, I might not have it, but I don't want them to have it.
Yeah, exactly.
It's because I think that's an envious person. I think that's a quality of an envious person of like, it's not that they don't want what you have, they just don't want you to have it.
Right.
And I think I haven't crossed that line yet. No, I shouldn't say yet. I haven't crossed that line, and I'm thankful for that. I'm thankful because I have enough self-awareness to be like, I don't want to get there. And in order to not get there, I put lines of resistance. And my lines of resistance are, hey, the grass is greener on the other side. Siempre se va a ver así.
Yes.
And I just need to look at my lawn, I just need to focus on my lawn, and not in a self-centered way, but in a like, okay, but what am I giving? How am I watering my plants or whatever? How am I also también like, a veces pensamos que hacemos para merecer y todo el concepto de la Biblia es no te mereces nada.
Ujú.
No importa qué hagas o dejes de hacer, no te mereces nada.
Todo lo
Ento-
que tienes es por
es
gracia
por
y
gracia,
misericordia.
exacto. Entonces también you have to do that work of like, I truly don't deserve it. I truly don't deserve it. I don't care about anyone else, but I don't deserve anything. And so cada vez que me llegan las cosas, I should be thankful porque no me lo merecía.
Right.
All right. And so, but relationships for me would be one, a big, big, big one. And then every once in a while, very similarly to you, I think for me is I feel envy of how other people don't seem, I don't know if they care or not care, but don't seem to care much about the things that I desire in a way. So for example, when I talk to women that are like, "Oh, I don't care if I don't ever get married." Or
Ah,
I don't care and you truly believe it and you're looking at this woman and you're like, "Oh my god, she's really fine.
just
She's
chilling.
she's chilling, you know?" Or, "Oh, I don't care if I don't ever have kids. In fact, I might not ever want kids, you know?" And I feel like sometimes now I don't envy that desire of like not wanting to have kids or not wanting a desire. I feel like I envy that nonchalant attitude or freedom. I don't know if it's even freedom really. They just seem so carefree about it. And
They don't seem like they're obsessing over the thing that you want.
yes,
Yeah.
exactly. And to me, it's like I feel like sometimes I feel like I'm very obsessed over things. Sometimes I feel like, oh my God, I need to chill. I need to chill. And sometimes I'm like, oh my God, I'm 30. I just turned 30. My biological clock is ticking, and I feel very pressured sometimes. And then you know how sometimes women are women of plans, like by this time I should have, done this, and by this time I should have done that, and by this time, and then you talk to other women and they're like, oh, I can wait. I can wait another 5 years. And in my head, I'm like, I cannot, like 5 years. Yo no puedo, And so I think, again, I don't envy the idea of not wanting to have children or being okay with not, y todo eso. I feel like I envy, again, what they seem to portray, which is freedom almost, which is like, I want to be as secure. I don't know. I want to be
At
as
peace.
at peace. Maybe faith, a lo mejor también, de que sé que me va a llegar a su tiempo
Cuando me
y
llegue.
cuando me llegue. And I feel sometimes that I don't have that.
Yeah.
I feel sometimes that I'm just like, como que I have to do something, si no, nunca me va a llegar. So I feel like I have feelings of envy in those moments. But then the question now is, how do you deal with those moments of envy?
I mean, I think that, obviously the word of God is clear in that, la envidia no viene de Dios.
Absolutely.
Now, I believe that just like anger, these are emotions that, are part of the human experience that we're supposed to have. And just like the word of God says, enójate pero no pequéis. You can feel the emotion and participate in the experience, but do not let it go past a certain point that
Right.
now you're living in sin because you do not want to let go of X emotion. I think for me, I allow myself to sit in it. I cry if it whatever it is that I particularly feel envious about, like if I'm being envious with you, for example, I might not text you for a few hours, and I might just be like, you know what, Lula's being a little extra nonchalant today. I might just tell her that I'm having a long lunch, and I will remove myself from the situation. Just like if it's social media, I'm going to remove myself from the situation
Right.
because I identify right now I'm vulnerable to this. Now, I don't believe that Instagram is going to take you to hell and having it is a negative thing, but I do think that when it crosses a line and now it's affecting my emotions, I need to turn it off
Okay.
because this isn't what the point of this is supposed to be. So for me, it's like I need to get off Instagram because if I am not mature enough or maybe it's not even maturity, maybe I'm just not secure enough right now in my emotions to deal with this, maybe I just don't need to see what people are doing with their lives.
Right.
So I'll remove myself from the situation. If it's the parents one, um, if it's a parent that I know or that I'm close to, I will turn up my respect. I will turn up my kindness. I will turn up my servicial mode. Because if I see, for example, if you were, talking to your mom a certain way and I was having that like, oh, like I can't believe you're acting like that, I would be like, hermana Marilu, ¿qué necesita? ¿Qué necesita algo? Like, don't focus on this person. How can I help you? How can I? And that's how I cope. But with the other two,
So sort of being an example in a way.
in that one, yes. Like, I'm so angry at you acting this way. So I have to show the attributes of what I would want to do if my dad was here. So with the other two, I think it's removing myself. And then I sit in it. And I usually, prayer should be the first thing I do. But it's not always the first thing I do. Sometimes I voice it, and sometimes Lula's the person that I talk to. Sometimes it's Joel, the person that I talk to, and I cry, and I'm like, I'm hurting that this is happening. I'm hurting that this is my reaction to it. And normally I run to someone that I know is going to have the sensitivity to not bash me and kick me when I'm down and be like, why would you desire that? Why is someone's happy moment hurting you? I choose to speak to someone that is going to speak life into me. And that's usually my spouse or Lula. Or my sister, and whichever one of the cards I drew that today it's Annie, and I'm like,
At random.
at random, this is happening, and I feel like this, and 9 times out of 10, the 3 of them are very similar. It's the like, I get it. It's understandable. I understand why you're feeling this way. Let's talk about that. Let's sit with that. But also, God in His timing is going to provide. And it's a reminder of faith. It's a reminder of having that peace. And for me, voicing it helps me confess it. I know that's not the case for everyone. Some people don't need to talk to anybody. That's perfectly fine. I personally find a lot of freedom and a lot of healing when I talk to someone about what I'm going through. So I do that. And then after that, I kind of just pray about it, and I'm just like, okay, Lord, like I cried, I, did this, I spoke to someone, help me, keep pushing through, help me to find peace and solace in you, and I move on. And I kind of press on, and obviously you're not always prepared, when you're face to face with these situations, but that's kind of the like subconscious pattern that I take. What about for you?
Those are very good coping mechanisms. Well, not coping mechanisms. Strategies to overcome it, really. Removing yourself. I think for me, I sit with it.
You sit with it.
I sit with it. That's the. I don't think. I'm not too sure if I remove myself. Maybe I remove myself when it completely hurts a lot. But I don't think I'm smart enough to, as soon as I get it, I get that feeling, to remove myself. I think I have some crude masochistic things in me.
I don't think that. I think sometimes it's pride.
Yes, yes.
I
do deal
we
with
don't
pride.
want to admit that this bothered us. We don't want to admit that we're vulnerable to this.
Right.
So
then you're right. I don't think I have mastered the capacity of removing myself on time. I think I tend to remove myself once I'm very hurt. And I'm forced to remove myself, not necessarily because I like, so I need to work on that. But I think what helps me is to sit with it. And when I sit with it, it's usually, if I'm honest, it's usually a prayer. I don't mean like, oh my God, I'm kneeling and I'm talking to God, but it takes the form of a prayer, because I'm confessing to God. I'm confessing, I'm feeling this. I really am feeling envy. I really am feeling jealousy, because sometimes envy and jealousy go hand in hand. and I'm feeling and I know it's not from you, God, and I know you're not depositing that in my life, and I know you're not speaking that in my life, but I'm feeling it. Help me overcome it. And then what I tend to do is I tend to go to the root of it, and usually it's like, well, because there's a desire behind it. That's that. And then I what helps me too, I feel, is that, and again, this isn't for everyone, and some people might come at me after this, but what helps me also is, at least for me, I know that there isn't nothing, or there isn't anything in this world I can tell God, or cannot tell God, that will make him stop loving me.
Hmm.
So because I know that's the truth, I sometimes do like I have reproach. I tell God, but and you and I can connect in
Yeah.
this. But if these are your desires, like they're sort of like godly desires, to have a family, to have a godly marriage, to bring children into this world to serve you, why hasn't it happened?
Mm-hmm.
So then I do question him in that sense. So how long must I wait for these good desires to happen when you've planted them in my heart,
Right.
when you planted them in my mind? So then, ¿qué hago? Show me. And I do, and I feel like having those conversations where I'm true to what I feel, I'm true and honest to God, and I confess it to him, uh, helps me navigate it better. And then, yes, al igual que tú, a veces no es él el primero al que voy, unfortunately. Sometimes it's you, sometimes it's my mom. But usually, what happens when that happens is that sometimes I don't like what I'm hearing. So it's like, you know what? I'm going to take it to God. And then God is like, well, no, that's what you need to be hearing. And it's like, okay, fine. So even though I know that God should be the first person to go to, sometimes I go to the people that I would like to that I usually go to, and they're just like a reflection of what God is trying to tell me, really,
Right.
which is usually you or my mom. And so I think even in that, God finds grace for me, that He uses you or my mom to bring me back, to be like,
Yeah.
no, that's what you needed to hear. You don't like it, but that's what you needed to hear. Y no, okay, no me viniste a hablar a mí primero. That's fine. Do you, boo boo? Yeah, this is God talking to me.
Right.
But I'm gonna use your mom and Kes and maybe someone else to tell you what you need to hear, regardless of whether you came to me or not. And I feel like that's something that I appreciate a lot. I thank God for that. That despite me not prioritizing His presence in my life sometimes, or His opinion, or what He has to say, He still finds the way to voice it to me.
I think with everything that you said, with all the coping mechanisms, I think another thing that's also difficult is that when we come to terms with what we are envious about, there's a real struggle with how to apply faith when there's a lot of scripture that
Yes.
says, el que pide recibe, or delight yourself in the Lord and he will delight. It says, seek ye the kingdom of God first and his righteousness, and all these things will be added
Added
unto you.
onto
And
you.
then there's another one that says, delight yourself in the Lord and he will answer the desires of your heart. Those are three like major ones that I've heard of. Or anyone with faith the size of the mustard seed could move mountains, right? So you have all of these verses that are talking about faith and just asking, and exactly what Lula was saying. What do you do when what you're asking is not $1 million? It's not a sports car. It's not
A
you
big
know
mansion. It's
a
not.
big mansion.
Yes.
What do you do when what you're asking is genuinely a pure desire and a godly given desire? For some of you, it may not be a baby and it may not be a husband, but it might be, I'm burned out and I need rest. I'm doing too much, Lord, and I just need rest. For some, it might be, direction. I don't know where you're leading me, Lord. I'm feeling so much resistance. I don't know where to belong. I don't know where, where to go from here. So that envy or that desire, whatever, could be a million things. And some of those desires could come from a pure place or maybe a God given desire. And what I could say as far as how do I deal with that, it's not always, I don't think I always win that battle. I think some days I cling to the words and I cry out these scriptures and I remind myself, Lord, your timing is perfect. You know when, if you're waiting on, giving me what I'm asking, then in the process, mold me, sift me, if there's some character building that needs to happen in this process that you just really want me to kind of go through and evolve and improve and be transformed, then let me be that. Let me be that individual. And don't make this season of waiting or this season of asking to be a waste. Let there be purpose to my pain. Let there be a purpose to
Yes.
my
Yes.
desire. And so I think that, for me, it's not something that I always know how to do. It's just sometimes the constant, it's faith. It's the constant of like, despite of how I feel, I'm going to put my burdens on you and I'm going to trust that you know what's best for me. So I'm going to focus on what your word says, which is seek you and your righteousness. What's righteousness? Basically, for us to live a godly life. Me falta, siempre me falta. There's always something for me to do. There's always work for me to put in. So in reality, there's always something for me to do in this season of waiting. So I'm going to focus on that. And so that's another thing that I feel like is an element of like when we're dealing with envy, and especially when what we're envious about is something that we constantly justify, and that's where it makes it harder for us to let go of it, because we're like, but it's a good thing, Lord. Like,
Yeah.
why can't I have it?
Yeah. I think um going off of those scriptures, I think that also we need to look at like what are the desires of our hearts, right? And I think porque ahorita podemos decir, well, how having a marriage, a godly marriage, having children that are brought up in the word and God, todo eso is I would say a God-given desire, right? But I think that sometimes also we need to look at our like our motives. Porque for example, I heard a preaching where this pastor was saying that and it's on Instagram. Probably other people have seen it, where it says that esta Ana, ¿verdad? Su oración fue contestada cuando su oración cambió. So, su oración era, es que soy humillada, es que soy, no tengo hijos y es lo que se tiene que tener, a mi edad ya debería de
Remove my
tener, ya,
shame.
¿verdad? Entonces, and it wasn't answered, but then her prayer changed into, God, I want this child for your glory. I want to give him unto you. And God answered that prayer. And so I think this pastor was saying that sometimes we need to look at our motives of where our desires are at. Like a lot of people might have some desires. Y de todas maneras, Dios se los va a dar. Sí, porque Dios es soberano y si Él quiere se hace y si Él no quiere no se hace. Pero yo pienso que a couple of years ago, my desire to be in a relationship was simply and solely to not be alone. Was simply and just to feel loved, to receive. And I think once I realized, no, that's a very self-centered, very selfish way of thinking of love. I'm never going to receive, or rather, I'm glad that I didn't receive it back then, because I would have received what I was looking for, what I was attracting,
Right.
which was a very self-centered idea of love. So now it's like, no, I now it's not about what how I'm on the receiving end. Now it's like I want to give.
Yeah.
I want to give to my children. I want to give to my husband. I want to give of me. I want to I'm not saying that, oh my God, I'm this sacrificial lamb, like I just want to sacrifice everything. No, but I'm ready and committed to make those sacrifices
Right.
for my kids, for my husband, for my family. And so I think now my prayer has changed. My motives have changed.
Right.
My idea of even those heart's desires has changed. So I think
Analyzing.
yes, analyzing also helped me, analyzing where do these things stem from. And once I got there, it's like, okay, then how do I fix it now? How do I, y no yo, Dios, how do I allow God to fix that in me? How am I going to seek God more? Porque la Biblia, como lo acabas de decir, to seek his kingdom first.
Right.
Y todo lo demás será por añadidura. Entonces, how am I seeking his kingdom? Am I truly seeking his kingdom? And even in that, am I seeking it with hoping las añadiduras? Or am I seeking him because
Genuinely, I'm seeking the kingdom.
truly, genuinely, like I'm just, Lord, it's you. Y si no te tengo a ti, no tengo nada y no soy nada.
Right.
Right? And so, y no estoy diciendo que eso es fácil. Eso no es fácil porque, again, you're dealing with your flesh, you're dealing with your desires, you're dealing with... Pero no son malas cosas, Dios.
Right.
No son cosas, o sea, como dijiste tú, no te estoy pidiendo dinero, no te estoy pidiendo una casa, no te estoy pidiendo, although, no te, no te estoy pidiendo worldly things. Te estoy pidiendo eternal things.
Yeah.
Te estoy pidiendo things that will allow me, in some small way to understand your love a little bit better.
Right.
And so,
I think, with relate to you, you guys all know that the basis of this podcast is for you to relate to us and us to relate to
yes.
you. And, I think Lila and I have always been transparent that even though we talk a lot about, our faith and all of that, in our effort to be Christ-like, we have to be honest about the areas that we struggle with. And we know that this is something that a lot of you guys struggle with. It's an unfortunate reality in the world we live in with social media. And all of us can relate to envy. All of us can relate to a desire that has yet to be fulfilled. And we hope that in this podcast, not only you could feel understood, but hopefully in something that we do or some kind of coping mechanism, like Lula said, you might be like, okay, maybe I haven't tried that. Maybe I need to do that. Maybe next time I need to just, try sitting with it, or removing myself, or admitting that I'm vulnerable to this. And then maybe I need to analyze what my motive is behind, because if we just sit with that emotion of I'm just feeling envious and we never go past that,
No.
then yeah, you might not be an envious person, but you miss what that emotion could reveal. When you're angry, or when you're sad, or when you're anxious, or whatever, these emotions stem from something.
From a need.
From a need. And when you are envious, it reveals something that's going on. And instead of settling in that negative emotion and having no purpose to it, maybe there's a need that you can bring to the Lord.
Yes. Amen.
And that's the purpose of it. So we hope you guys enjoyed this episode, and we will see you on the next one.
Bye.